Hello again, this is the 7th installment of my unit circle trig videos. In this one, I'm going to build on the last one. In the last one, I introduced the definition of sine and cosine of theta as the y and the x values on the unit circle where the terminal ray of theta intersects it. And I'll review that in a second. But I'd like to expand on that and show you the definitions of all 6 of the trig functions. You may not have used that word, or you may have, in your description in your classes of trig, but you can either call them ratios or trig values or trig functions, but really functions is the most proper term. The 6 of them are sine and cosine and tangent, and the reciprocal functions I'll remind you of in a moment if you've seen them before. They are in the old version of trigonometry with SOHCAHTOA. Here are the old definitions of the 6 trig functions. If you have a right triangle and an angle theta, and then this is the opposite side and the adjacent side and the hypotenuse, then you probably recall that the definition of the sine of theta is the opposite over the hypotenuse, OH in SOHCAHTOA. And the cosine of theta is the adjacent over the hypotenuse, which is AH, and the tangent of theta is the opposite over the adjacent, the OA. So those 3 you almost certainly have seen before. The next 3 are just the reciprocals of these. And they aren't super important, honestly. I mean, they get used in various places, but they get a little, honestly, overemphasized, I think, in high school math. That said, you're in high school math, so you got to learn them. The reciprocal of sine is the cosecant of theta, CSC of theta, and it is the hypotenuse over the opposite. And the secant of theta is the reciprocal of cosine. If you're annoyed by the co and the non-co, and the non-co and the co here, join the club. Everybody who's ever seen this has gotten annoyed. You just got to learn it. It is the hypotenuse over the adjacent, the reciprocal of this one, and the reciprocal and tangent is called cotangent of theta, and it's the adjacent over the opposite. So work on memorizing these, but the most important definitions, actually, are the unit circle definitions. These are the old ones. The new ones are unit circle definitions. This is a very important diagram and set of definitions to have in some notes somewhere. And I'm going to write them nice and clearly, so I encourage you to write everything down here and really study this. This is a very nice diagram and set of information here. So I'm going to have some angle theta. It is not important that it's a positive angle. I put it in the second quadrant just because, whatever, it's got to be somewhere. But it could be in any quadrant. It could be any sort of rotation. But this is the unit circle. So this is 1, 0, 0, 1, negative 1, 0, and 0, negative 1. Those are the ordered pairs for those 4 points. The radius of this thing is 1. Every single angle theta will have a terminal ray that intersects the unit circle at some point. I'm going to call that point x, y. So I don't know what x and y are, but I do know they are wherever that terminal ray hits. And what I showed you in the last video was that the sine of this angle is defined to be this y value, this height. It's just that y value. The cosine of theta is equal to the x value of that point, which is this length. The tangent of theta I didn't talk about. But the tangent, think about its SOHCAHTOA definition. It's the opposite over the adjacent. And you can see in this diagram, there's always going to be a right triangle here. The opposite is the y value. The adjacent is the x value. So it should make sense that it is y over x, which notice is also sine over cosine. We're going to write it as y over x, but it's sine over cosine also. The reciprocal functions, which I've written over here, I'm going to erase them here. I don't quite have enough room, but they are defined as reciprocals of these. And that should be an of course. Cosecant of theta is the reciprocal of sine, so it's 1 over y. Secant of theta is the reciprocal of cosine, so it's 1 over x, and the reciprocal tangent is cotangent, so it's x over y. This is a big deal. This diagram is a big deal. This set of definitions is a big deal. Learn it, memorize it, begin to use it. All right, I'm going to stop the video here and start the next one in a moment, building right off of it.